Good morning, geometry. So today we're going to be learning about the properties of kites. As I said, whenever that was, Friday, I guess. And the properties of kites, they're pretty simple. But, this is going to be a short notes video, but make sure you stick around until the end because I'm going to go over some problems from the assignment for today as well. So, let's see. First of all, we have our definition of a kite, which is a quadrilateral that has two pairs of consecutive congruent sides, but opposite sides are not congruent. So what that's going to look like is this, and we can see that the consecutive sides, the sides that are next to each other, are congruent. So that side is congruent to that side. However, additionally, like these other two sides that are next to each other are congruent because they're marked with the two tick marks. But the sides that are across from each other are not congruent. It's just the sides that are next to each other. So if they're next to each other like that, then they're going to be congruent. So let's see. The first property of a kite is that the diagonals are going to be perpendicular to one another. So I'll draw that in. Here's one of my diagonals. There's my other diagonal. And the property was that they're perpendicular. Therefore, that's a right angle, and that's a right angle, and that's a right angle, and that's a right angle. Just so it's not like super crowded, I'm gonna erase a couple of those. So that's gonna turn into 4 right triangles, and we are going to be using that property to determine a lot of the things today. Here are some other things about those diagonals once they're drawn in, and I'm going to use different colors here instead of like different angle markers because I'm going to be drawing a bunch of different congruent angles here. So when I draw in those diagonals, I know that this angle is going to be congruent to this angle. I also know this angle will be congruent to this one. And as I said, I'm not going to be using a bunch of different like arc marks because I'd have to go up to like 4, and I'm just going to use color coding instead. I also know this is congruent to this. So those two angles are going to be congruent. And then these two angles down here are going to be congruent. So when you draw in those diagonals in a kite, you're going to have 4 sets of congruent angles that form. And we're going to be using that property a lot today. All right, our second property of a kite is that exactly one pair of opposite angles are congruent. So, clearly, if we just look at this kite, I know that that angle at the bottom is not going to be congruent to this angle at the top because that one at the bottom is skinnier than the one at the top. It is going to be the two formed when the non-congruent sides meet. So I have this side meeting up with this side. Those are two non-congruent sides. And the angle between them is going to be congruent to the other angle where the two non-congruent sides meet up. So I only have one pair of opposite angles being congruent in a kite. And it's going to be these two. The one at the top and the one at the bottom, not worried about those. They're not going to be congruent. But when we draw in those diagonals, each side of those angles are going to be congruent to one another, as we can see, like there and there. Okay, so let's see some example problems with it. So our first example problem, it wants us to solve for x. And remember, when we draw in those diagonals of a kite, it forms a right angle. They're perpendicular, which means this is a right triangle, which has this base of 12, this hypotenuse of 13, and if we have the hypotenuse on one of the legs of a right triangle, we can go ahead and use the Pythagorean theorem. We're going to be using that a lot today. So I know that my first leg, which is x squared, plus the other leg, which is 12 squared, equals 13 squared, because 13 is the hypotenuse here. Let's see, 12 squared is 144, so I have x squared plus 144 equals, and 13 squared is 169. I'll subtract 144 from both sides. Then I have x squared equals 25. And then I'm going to take the square root of both sides to get x equals 5. All right, example number 2. I have this kite and put in 3 of those angles. I have that 105, that 50, and this one's x. I don't know about this one over here, but those non-congruent sides are meeting here at this x, so I know this x is going to be congruent to this right here. So this is also going to be x. So a kite is a quadrilateral, and the interior angles of quadrilateral add up to 360 degrees. So I know I can do 105 plus 50 plus, well, there's x plus x, so I'll just say 2x equals 360. Let's see, I will combine like terms, so I have 155 plus 2x equals 360. Subtract 155 from both sides. That's going to be 2x equals 205. Divide both sides by 2. X equals 102.5 degrees. And that would be my solution for number 2 there. And that would be the end of the week 16 notes. So you can go ahead and submit those if you're all done. By the way, please remember to submit the assignment we worked on in class on Friday. I know that we did it all together, but I still have some people who have yet to turn it in. So please make sure you do so. Anyways, let's look at today's assignment. So it is just called Kites. It's in Schoology. And it is going to be relying on pretty much the stuff we just did. So like here for number 1, it wants you to solve the measure of angle B and angle D. I know they're going to be congruent. So you can just add up the 85 and the 43, subtract it from 180, or not 180, 360, and then divide that remaining answer by 2 to get B and D, because whatever they are, they're going to be congruent. On number 2 here, I know J and L are congruent, so I can automatically say J is going to be 82, and then add up the angles inside this kite, subtract it from 360 to get K. For numbers like 3 and 4, remember those congruencies that I was talking about in the notes. I want to do number 5 together. So for number 5 here, we have a bunch of angles to fill in. And let's see, I know that this 65 is going to be congruent to this angle here when you draw on those diagonals of the kite. So 65 and 4 are congruent, so 4 is 65 degrees. Likewise, I know that this 52 and this angle 7 are going to be congruent, so angle 7 is going to be 52. One other thing I can figure out without even doing any math here is this angle 3. That's right in the middle. And remember, when they intersect, it forms right angles. So that 3 has to be 90 degrees. I know that whatever 5 is going to be the same as 6, and whatever 1 is going to be the same as 2. So let's look at this triangle right here. I know that's a right triangle. And it has that 1 inside. So I know that 65 plus the measure of angle 1 plus 90, because it's a right triangle, is going to equal 180, because the interior angles of a triangle add up to 180. So that's going to give me the measure of angle 1 plus 155 equals 180, which is going to give me the measure of angle 1 equals 25. And as I said, once I found 1, I knew what 2 was going to be, because I know they have to be congruent. I'm going to be using the same property to determine the measure of this angle 6. So, I'm looking at this right triangle here now. And it has that 52, it has a 90-degree angle, and it has that measure of angle 6. So I have 52 plus 90 plus measure of angle 6 is 180, or 142 plus the measure of angle 6 is 180. Subtract that 142 from both sides. We get the measure of angle 6 equals, was that 38? Yeah. 38. And I know that angles 5 and 6 are going to be congruent. So since 6 was 38, 5 is going to be 38. And that's how you would solve number 5. And you would do the same thing relatively for number 6 there. Let's see, another one that I want to do together is going to be number 8. So number 8 tells me that AC is 38. So here's AC, and the entire length of that is 38. And ED, which is just this part, is 41. And I want to find CD. So once I draw on those diagonals, which is what AC and BD are, I know a right triangle is going to form. So this is a right triangle, and I know one of the legs is 41, but 38 is not the leg of that triangle. 38 is like the entire diagonal, but I know that it's going to be half of the diagonal there. So that means that this part is 19. Actually, real quick, that's something I forgot to mention on the notes, so I'm going to head back to the notes real quick. So on the notes, when you draw on those diagonals, let's see. When you draw on those diagonals, this segment there is congruent to that segment there. But those are the only two congruent segments that are going to be formed when you draw on the diagonals. And I guess I already have something with 1 tick mark, so I should probably mark those with 3 tick marks. So yeah, when you draw on the diagonals of a kite, the diagonal that connects those two congruent angles is going to be bisected. The other diagonal isn't. So let's go back. So yeah, that's how I knew that half of this diagonal would be 19, because half of 38 is 19. So now I have this right triangle, and it looks like CD is the hypotenuse of it. So I'm going to say 41 squared plus 19 squared equals CD squared. Let's see, 41 squared is 1,681. 19 squared is 361. And then equals CD squared. So that would be 2,042 equals CD squared. If I want to get CD, just take the square root of both sides. And I get CD equals 45.188. For problems numbers 7 through 10, you will get decimals. Please round them to 3 decimal places. Yeah, just 7 through 10. All right, another one I want to do together is number 11 here. So on number 11, actually, no, not number 11, number 12, sorry. Number 12. So I see this is a kite, and it looks like that L and that N, the two angles that are marked, are those two congruent angles here. Most of the time, you'll just be able to tell visually which ones are the congruent set. So I know since they are congruent, that 5x plus 23, which is L, equals 8x minus 31, which is N. I'll start by adding 31 to both sides. So I'm going to have 5x plus 54 equals 8x. Subtract 5x from both sides. So that'll give me 54 equals 3x. Divide both sides by 3. 18 equals x. However, it did not ask me to find x. It asked me to find the measure of angle M, or the measure of angle L. So L is this 5x plus 23. So I'm going to take that x and plug it in. So 5 times 18 plus 23. 5 times 18 is 90, plus 23 is 113. So the measure of angle L is 113 degrees. You would do something similar. Well, for number 14 here, it gives me 2 of these angles inside this triangle, and I know the third angle is a right angle. So you can say 9x plus 1 plus 2x, or 23x minus 7 plus 90 equals 180. Solve for x. And I know it says to find STV, but you know STV is going to be congruent to this angle SRV. So you can plug it in, once you solve for x, plug it into this 9x plus 1 to get your answer. Here for number 13, let's see. I know that D and B are going to be congruent, and since D is 109, B is 109. So I would set this up as 5x plus 14 plus 109 plus 3x plus 8 plus 109 equals 360, because it is a quadrilateral. And then just solve for x. Let's see. And yeah, there's those last two there. If you need any help solving any of these, please come to my office hours. Please let me know. I'm always happy to help. But yeah, kites, you know, me going over the assignment took a lot longer than the actual notes on kites. So if you need help with the assignment at all, please let me know. Please come to my office hours. I'll be more than happy to help. But other than that, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a nice rest of your day.